Welcome back to Health Beat. Dr. Jeff Armstrong and Dr. Adam Brown, both podiatrists, are here talking about how to get you ready for the Cooper River Bridge Run and Walk if you haven't already started training. The whole goal of this conversation is to make sure you do it safely. Before the break, we were highlighting the proper protocol for training, whether it is running or walking, and now it's time to talk about footwear. Dr. Armstrong, how important is it to find the proper shoe for running and walking?
It is very important because everything is designed differently now for different sports, and so you really need a shoe that is designed for running. And shoes are for protection, and they're also there to maximize our running efficiency. So if you choose the wrong shoe, it can actually inhibit the way that you run and cause further injury.
Do you find that you have patients who, instead of looking for the right shoe, what they're doing is they're trying to find the right shoe that fits their budget, you know, the shoe on sale or the shoe with the prettiest colors, that kind of thing? Or is there a lot of awareness out there about the importance of finding a shoe that has the proper support?
I think we see it a lot in the new runners, especially the people who have decided this past winter or early spring that they want to do the bridge run, and they go out and buy a pair of shoes, or they just use a pair of tennis shoes that they may have in their closet that may not be appropriate for their foot or for even running.
Dr. Brown, what type of foot injuries have you treated in the office that could have easily been prevented by just having the proper shoe?
I get a lot of overuse injuries. Soft tissue strains occur all the time as a shoe starts to bottom out. It loses cushioning, so just the protection from the pounding of the ground, but also becomes more flexible. And as the shoe becomes more flexible, again, more tissue strains occurring in the arch area, and the ankle, and the Achilles tendon in the back of the heel. So there's a lot of injuries that can occur as the shoe starts to wear down. If
someone wants to do daily running or walking for their health, what are the rules about when you should replace your sneakers?
A general rule is 400 to 500 miles. You know, that's kind of hard for most people to keep track of. If you're using the shoe, and I recommend that people use those shoes specifically just for their walking or running, so they don't wear it to the mall or the grocery store. It's just easier to keep track of, again, how much mileage you're putting on them. And time frame wise, you know, probably for people who run 3 or 4 times a week, we're probably looking at 5 to 7 months, somewhere in that time frame. And I tell most of my runners to write the date in the bottom of the shoe. Pick the insole up. When you purchase it, you write the date in the bottom, so you really have a good idea of when you purchase it.
So if you're like proud of your sneakers that you've had for the last 3 years, that's not a good thing.
And I see it all the time.
Oh, goodness. Well, Dr. Armstrong, what are some good shoe rules that people need to keep in mind when they're going out to buy the right shoe for running and walking? And you've got some examples, you know, to kind of help explain.
I think the most important shoe rule is to find a shoe that fits your foot type, and not just the shoe that looks good or the bread.
Though?
Well, most people don't understand their foot type, and there's really kind of 3 different types: either a high arch, a low arch, or kind of just a normal arch or a neutral arch. And one of the ways to check your feet that is very simple is to take a wet towel and put it on the floor, step onto the wet towel, and then step onto some concrete, and it'll leave kind of an imprint of your foot, and that will give you a better picture. If it's very flat, it's going to be very full and very covered, and if it's very high arch, there's just going to be a thin area on the outside. And then you can take that knowledge to the store and kind of look for an appropriate shoe.
That is great. You have some sneakers on set. How important, what should we be looking for when we are looking at the wall of shoe selection?
Well, in relation just to what we're talking about with different foot types, there's a couple different models here where this one has a larger flange on the inside of the heel, which will prevent this person from rotating inward. So if you have a flat foot, this is going to be more appropriate for that. And if you have a high arch foot, this is a more cushioned shoe, which they have an air bladder back here that allows you to have some cushion when you hit. It doesn't resist as much motion, but allows for more cushioning.
Well, it sounds like it's also important for someone to know if they have overpronation in their walking style.
Absolutely. That's basically what we're relating to with the different foot types. Somebody's going to either supinate or pronate which is rolling inward too much. And you kind of really need to understand that. And a lot of reputable shoe stores, especially running stores, can help you with that, even put you on a treadmill and kind of watch you. And that's really the good starting point for buying shoes.
Well, an increasingly popular running shoe is the five-fingered or five-toed shoe, whatever you want to call it. I think it's known as the five-fingered shoe. And we have an example here on set. It looks kind of like a glove for your foot. What's the verdict on this? Is it good or bad for your foot, Dr. Brown?
Well, it's trying to simulate barefoot walking, barefoot running, like it was back at the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Of course, back then, we didn't have all the concrete and the paved roads and all the rest, a lot of dirt and grass that we were running on. The approach to, I mean, my personal feeling, I love it. It makes sense to me as far as, again, I think it helps strengthen the foot. I mean, if you can train properly with it. Now, the key is training properly, and you have to start out at a very slow pace. You can't go from your normal running routine or walking routine into a shoe like this and think you can pick it right up. You're going to have multiple injuries of the lower extremity, the knees. So most of my patients that have started on it or have talked to me about it, we generally start out with a quarter of what they normally do and do that for a week and just see how they tolerate it. If they can get to a grassy area or dirt, even better to start. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot more injuries with this type of shoe.
What about you, Dr. Armstrong? How do you feel about that kind of shoe?
Well, I definitely think, as Dr. Brown said, that there is an advantage to these shoes in that they're very lightweight, and it does make for a more efficient run and sometimes faster if you build up to that. But what you don't want to do is start too much or think that you can transition directly into this shoe from these shoes at your normal mileage, because these shoes are designed to be more lightweight, so they have less padding in them and they have a lower heel, which increases the stress on the Achilles tendon as well as increases the stress on the forefoot, because this requires more midfoot or forefoot motion. So we see a lot more injuries in that area of the foot.
Wow. Well, we only have about a minute left before we have to take a commercial break, but let's go ahead and get started with some of the most common foot injuries, the signs and symptoms that you've got something that needs to be checked out by the doctor. Dr. Armstrong, let's start first with the Achilles tendon.
Yeah, the Achilles tendon is a large tendon on the back of the heel that goes up into the leg and attaches to the calf muscle, and it's put under a lot of strain. And as it's put under a lot of strain, it starts breaking down slowly over time and becomes inflamed, especially with hill running. So if people aren't used to running the hill or the bridge, you know, and they start training on that, they can really cause a lot of inflammation and irritation into that tendon, which can really slow down your training.
All right. Well, and we've got also several other common running, walking injuries to go over, and we're going to highlight that after the break. So learn the signs and symptoms when we come back. Stay with us.